Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasa Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasa Bande Gurashi Charanara Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Gita Vaditramadhyam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Niramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Bande Gurashri Charanara Vrindam Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Bande Gurashri Chaturvidhashi Bhagavad Prasadam Svatana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidhashi Bhagavad Prasadam Svatana Truptan Kritaiva Trupte Bhajata Shariva Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Shradikama Davayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shradikama Davayara Pratikshana Swa Dhanalolupasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Nekunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Joktir Apekshaniya Tatrati Daksha Atibalavasa Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakravidacha Attidanapasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Sajjadharitena Shamasta Shashri Ruktastathabha Vyataiva Sadhavi Shamasta Shashri Kinto Prabhaja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Kinto Prabhaja Priya Eva Tasya Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadan Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadan Yasya Prasadan Dayam Stuvam Tasa Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Patsatadi Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Yendama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha, Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hare Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe Radha Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jai Shri Bhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jagannath Jaya Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Sitaram Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Pramanande Haribo Jai Vishpara Paramansa Prabhajakachati Ashtokara Saraswati Maharaj Divine Grace ISKCON Pratishta Bhivdi Samstapakachara Vaishnava Siromani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prima Bhaktidatta Patita Pavan Abhay Charavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patita Udhara Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Kuti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Si Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Jai Paramadayal Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Pramanama Sankirtane Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavarana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankitan Jaga Ki Jai Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihatmidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopakutna Radha Kund Samakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurdam Ki Jai The Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Shri Mayapurnavadip Ekachakradam Ki Jai Paramakaruna Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smasudra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karan Shingarev Bhagavan Ki Jai Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanande All glories to the Sambhava devotees All glories to the Sambhava devotees All glories to the Sambhava devotees All glories Glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gaur
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Prahlade Lade Daine. Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha.
Hiranyakashipu Vaksha.
Shilatankarna Khalaye. Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimho.
Jato Jato Jami Tato Nisingha.
Bahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha.
Bahir Nisingha Hridaye Nisingha.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasingha Madim Saranam Prapade.
Tava Kara Kamala Vare Nagam Adbhuta Shingam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Vringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare
Tabakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa Talita Hiranyakashipu Tanavinga Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare
Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare
Jaya Narasimha Dev Narasimha Dev Narasimha Dev Jaya Narasimha Dev
Jaya Nisingha Dev Nisingha Dev Nisingha Dev Jaya Nisingha Dev
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
श्री श्री बद्न विनाशक नरसिंह देव भगवान की भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की जय।
Shri Brindai तुलसी दिव्याय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्वताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की। Huh? Can you sing? No? Okay, no problem. What did you want to sing? You want to? Oh, sorry. You want to sing? Put me down. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah. I know. You don't want to sing?
It's okay.
You can do both? Put me down and
Okay, I feel it.
whatever you feel comfortable. Whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay.
I'll tell me down, but sing, yeah?
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Nama Namaha. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Nama Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Je tomara sharan loy tara vanch purna hoy.
Je tomara sharanala tara vancha purna.
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavan vasi.
Tume kripa kori kora tare Vrindavan vasi.
Moraiya बिलास बिलास कुंजे दियो वास नायने हेरी बो सदा युगल रूप राशि
नायने देव सदा जुगल रूप राशि
निवेदन दर सकिरनुगत करो
निवेदन दर सकिरनुगत करो
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा होय
दीन कृष्ण दास को ए न मोरा
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा ये नवासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि सप्पपानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि सप्पपानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
जय वृंदे देवी जय वृंदे देवी
जय वृंद देवी जय वृंद देवी जय वृंद
जय गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल
नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
वृंदे देवी तुलसी महारानी की
जय श्री वृंदै तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय। O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is also grant me residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always be wholly beautiful, pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, carry them to Ruvraj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani, Brinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Bhavamada Vagnini Rapanam Shri Akariva Chandrika Vittaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Ananda Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamruta Sadhanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijay Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakaya Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Pita Dushita Bhakta Bhagavan Mamati Durdhaivam Idrishamiyajani Nanuraga Nichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amani Namanadina Kirtaniya Sadari Nadanam Nadanam Nasundari Kavikamba Jagadisha Kamaye Mamadan Mani Kamalishwari Bhavatar Vakira Tukirahi Ainandatan Jakinkaram Paritama Vishame Bhavam Buddho Vipaya Prabhupada Pankaja Itaduri Sadesham Vichitaya Nayanam Gala Shudaraya Varanam Gadaya Gira Golakaya Jitam Bhukada Kavanam Grani Bhavishyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakrisa Pravasaitam Shunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Asli Shubha Padaratam Pinashtumam Adashnar Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadhatulam Pato Matranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratishe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the five condition of life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested with your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord on straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your Kazra devotional service, birth after birth. Oh, son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other I'm falling this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it shall remain so, even if it handles me rightfully by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1, to blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2, to consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4, to blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6, to give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7, to commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8, to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often vised as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9, to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10, to not have complete faith in chanting with the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Mangala Aarti, Shri Guru Pranam Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandiham Shri Guru Shri Jyotaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Savajatam Jagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhambitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunnavadi Pasatyade Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavana Videvi Daitaya Kripabdhaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Nama Madhujjo Jala Primadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Posiddhanta Dvantaharine Namam Gurukishoraya Sakchavera Murthaye Vipralambhara Sambodhe Padamujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sakchirananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaurabir Bhava Bhumeshwam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannataya Te Namah Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tasuratupangur Mama Mandamater Gatir Masarvasya Padambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtalivi Shiva Manushmarami Shmara Sarasarambi Vamshvata Tatastita Karshan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinata Shistuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutirevi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Dvaita Gadadhara
Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Riksha Laksavrite Surabhira Vipaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvananta Aravinda Dalaitaksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Visesa Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranaikeli Kalavilasam Shaman Tribanga Lalitan Yuta Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalandri Vritti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam and Adim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsala Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Manipum Gamanam Sopyastiyat Prabhadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Jaitam Jagaranda Kotim Yadras Chaktirasta Jagaranda Chaya Yadanta Antantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanyana Bhusa Suktadya Mevindigama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bistabirya Evani Jirupa Dayakalabi Goloka Evani Visata Gilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Bilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Anavataram Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramampamam Yo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagaranda Koti Koti Swaseswa Sadadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Sesa Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagaranda Stani Sute Jaigun Yatat Vishaya Veda Vitaya Mahanam Sadvavulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasa Yaprani Nam Pratifulam Smaratam Upetya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Talechatasya Devi Maheswaritama Sute 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 Prabhavani Jaya Vichasta Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shasti Stati Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chichesta Tesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakaste Hetu Yasam Bhutam Apitata Samapahitikarya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dipartsa Devi Desantanam Abhyapetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadra Keva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govinda Madi Purisham Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yes, Karna Narna Vajale Bhajati Smi Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Tara Saktam Avalamya Param Smamurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yes, Yaik Aniswasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yes Yakalavi Seso Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Basmanya Tasma Sakalation Jesu Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatiyat Apita Dratatra Brahma Ya Esa Jagadanda Vidanda Karta Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dwande Pranama Samayesi Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagat Jayasya Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganam Boomerus Jasha Jalas Tatatma Manasiti Jagat Jayani Yasmad Bhavanti Bhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yachchak Churesa Savita Sagala Grahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Sesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrata Kala Chakro Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahma Dikita Patagava Diyascha Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastindra Gopa Matavinda Mahoswakamra Bandhan Rupa Valabhaja Namatanoti Karmani Nirdhati Tuchabati Bhajam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranadi Bidhi Vatsalya Moho Gurugora Vasavya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadvisintalamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriyakanta Kanta Parama Purisha Kalpatarava Juma Bhumishchintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Nadyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Jyoti Param Apitat Aswadya Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Mihishabadi Shiravi Bhyaschasumahan Nimesa Dakyava Rajitina Hiya Trapisamaya Bhajay Swita Dipam Tamaham Ihagolakam Itiyam Vidantaste Santakshati Virachari Kati Paye Shri Guru Vastika Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Are from my respectful basin at the lotus feet as such. Spiritual master is who's an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands, and then he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Are from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship. But Lord, I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna four kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he's expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all real scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja ki jai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're going to go over again text number, Canto 3, Chapter 3, text number 23. Daivadine Sukamesu Daivadina Swayam Pumam Kovishram Beta Yogena Yogeswaram Anuvrata. Daiva, supernatural. Adinesu, being controlled. Kamesu, in sensed enjoyment. Daiva Adina, controlled by supernatural force. Swayam, himself. Puman, living entity. Ka, whoever. Vishrambeta, can have faith in. yogena, by devotional service. Yogeswaram, the Supreme Lord. Anuvrata, serving. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. In other words, only the devotee can understand Krishna's transcendental pastimes, because they are mutually contradictory often, and therefore people think it's nonsense. But it's not nonsense. It's the transcendental potency of the Lord enables him to do anything, and without it being contaminated. This is impossible for the mundane persons to understand, because everything they do is contaminated. However, the Lord is not subject to the same illusion as the ordinary living entities. So it says, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. Okay, so we explain the supernatural force means the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, that control the activities of mundane people. Of course, the mode of goodness is better than passion or lust and greed and, of course, ignorance. But still, the mode of goodness is a conditional mode. It conditions us to be satisfied with material success and relative material happiness. But there is no such thing as pure happiness or sustained happiness in the material world. Everything is interrupted always by the laws of material nature that people will invariably violate unless they are pure devotees of the Lord. So as stated in Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, men, and demigods within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called the Prakriti, or Daivi Maya. So this concept of Daivi Maya, this transcendental illusion, is coming from it's coming from the verse Daivi Esa Gunamayi Mama Maya Duradaya Mam Evaye Prabhadyante Mayame Tam Tarantite. 7th chapter, 14th verse, Bhagavad Gita. So this Daivi Maya, or this transcendental type of illusion, which is synonymous with Prakriti. Prakriti means that which is controlled. The material nature is controlled completely by the Lord. But the impersonalists and the nonsense scientists and philosophers do not accept that there is a supreme personality of Godhood who controls everything. They believe that material nature is functioning on its own and that it organizes itself due to different forces like gravity, etc. This, of course, is not true, but that's the best they can do through speculation. So, therefore, there has never been an experiment in the history of the world, nor will there be, of matter organizing itself. You can do millions of experiments, and still you will not prove that matter can organize itself. In other words, you can collect all materials to make a house, put them in one place, and wait for them to organize themselves into a building, it won't happen. Would it happen, you think? You think it would happen? No. So any experiment you do to prove that matter organizes itself will be a failure. But yet, they claim it's a scientific concept of chemical combination that causes life. There's no amount of any chemical combination that will cause life without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see how ridiculous. In fact, look up now, chemical evolution of life. Look it up. Let's see what it says. You'll see. It's just ridiculous what they say. Chemical evolution of life. What's it say? Yeah.
Third theory of life's origin is known as chemical evolution. In this idea, pre-biological changes slowly transform simple atoms and molecules into more complex chemicals needed to produce life.
Okay. So, have they ever done that experiment? Does it say that they actually did that experiment and had success? One big expert in chemical evolution of life came to UC Anaheim, the University of California in Anaheim. This is years ago. And one of Prabhupada's disciples, Bhaktiswarupa Damodar Maharaj, was getting his PhD in biology, or some kind of biology. And anyway, Bhaktiswarupa Damodar Maharaj told Prabhupada that this big guy is coming, one of the top chemical evolution people in the world. He said, you go to that meeting, he said, and ask him the following question. If I give you all the chemicals, can you produce life? So he actually did it. And near the end of the lecture, he asked him, sir, I have a question. If I give you all the chemicals, can you produce life? And what did the man say? He said, no. But yet, he's going all over the world and preaching or talking about chemical evolution of life. You see, this is how ridiculous and cheating these scientists are. A theory that's never been proved, they teach it as if it's fact. And they deny the existence, because of their enviousness of God, they deny the existence of a super intelligent personality who is the source of all creation. Okay, so here it says, no one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. Okay, now that is a Latin word, two Latin words put together, omni and potus, or power. So it means possessing all power. So, in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. That is, without any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. With any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in his conditional life. But simply by the activities of Bhakti Yoga, he can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. yaman yasyasmi tattvataha. One cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. So, as I said before anyone can even think of understanding Krishna's conjugal loving affairs in the spiritual world, they have to first become a pure devotee, free of all mundane desires for sense gratification, and fully dedicated to serving the Lord with love and devotion. Then they can understand this transcendental subject of power worship. Look that word up. There is married life and paramourship. Paramour means you have, in the material world, an illicit lover. In the spiritual world, there's nothing illicit about it. But when people hear that Krishna is dancing with other people's wives, they immediately think, oh, he's like us, engaging in dancing with other people's wives. In other words, he's engaging in illicit sex. What does it say? Paramourship.
Paramour is a lover specifically, an illicit or secret lover.
Right. So, when they hear of Krishna's paramour loving affairs, they immediately project their own perverted idea of it. But look at the sun. Like we said, traditionally in India, people would choose one field in their community, in their village, where everyone would pass stool and urine. In fact, one devotee wrote me and told me that she actually experienced this. Grandmother and grandfather farm, and they designated one plot on their farm where they would pass stool and urine, but they wouldn't do it during the day. They would always wake up in the Brahma Muhurta and take care of those activities. So you see, they were extremely regulated. That was her grandmother and grandfather. They're extremely regulated according to the principles of Krishna consciousness. That was the culture 1 or 2 generations ago in India. And now it's broken down. You know, people sleep through Brahma Muhurta. In fact, many of our devotees sleep through the Brahma Muhurta. And it's a big mistake. So, just like I was speaking to somebody's son yesterday. It was his birthday. And I said to him, how old are you? He said, 20. I said, wow, that's pretty serious. You got to get serious about life now. He said, what do you mean? I said, what time do you go to sleep? He said, oh, usually at 10:30 or 11. I said, that's a big mistake. He said, why is that a mistake? I said, because it's impossible for you to wake up going to bed so late in the Brahma Muhurta. He said, what do you mean the Brahma Muhurta? I said, it's 3 hours before sunrise. That is the most auspicious time of the day to make spiritual advancement. I said, what time do you wake up? He said, well, I'm trying to wake up around 6:30 now, but before I was waking up about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I said, you completely missed the Brahma Muhurta. I looked at his father, who's, initiated Brahmin. I said, hey, what are you teaching your kid? I said, and I explained to him, you have to go to sleep no later than 9:30 at night so you can wake up at least 4 o'clock in the morning. Actually, it's better to go to sleep even earlier than that so you wake up 3 o'clock in the morning. And then you have 2 to 3 hours of Brahma Muhurta where you can make the most tangible spiritual advancement. I said, otherwise, you're basically losing the benefit of the most important time of the day for spiritual advancement. So I said, you should make a vow today that from the rest of your life, you're going to go to sleep early and wake up early and take advantage of this Brahma Muhurta. I said, if you do this one thing, your whole life will be a success. Well, this is a 20-year-old kid. He did not understand this because his parents didn't teach him. Although his parents are initiated devotees with what you would call Bhakti Shastri and Bhakti Vaibhava and all those titles, but yet they can't encourage their own kid to follow these principles. You see, this is the dilemma that we're in right now, right? And then they subject their children to be educated by the demons. Where Prabhupada said, you don't have to send your kids to these schools. You can just train them in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. They get all knowledge. And they will also learn how to be self-controlled in order to make spiritual advancement. Not self-controlled for sense gratification like the karmis. They're self-controlled for sense gratification, right? They won't do anything spiritual, but they'll do everything for sense gratification. So they're self-controlled in a sense, but for the wrong purpose. But we should be self-controlled for making spiritual advancements throughout our whole life, beginning as early as possible. This was Prahlad Maharaj's message to his other classmates. They were all like 5 years old at that time. And he said, don't listen to anything these teachers are saying. They're all nonsense. You know, just chant Hare Krishna and engage in hearing and chanting about the pastimes of the Lord, you know. So his father wanted to kill him because he was saying that. And he tried to kill him. His father and mother both tried to kill the boy. He's only 5 years old. But he was protected by Krishna. And what was his fault? He didn't have any fault. The only problem was, for his father, it was nonsense. He was a devotee of Krishna. And he wants to kill his own son. This is nothing new. This has been going on since the beginning of time. And we see that most parents are like the parents of Prahlad Maharaj. They want to kill any idea. Like Prabhupada, while he was still in India before he came to the United States, he went around to many people that he knew who had more than one son, and he begged them, give me one of your sons, I will make him a pure devotee. Not one person did that. Not one person. This is in India. This is in India in the 1940s, right? So you see how much the culture has changed in India. It's not in the last 10 years or 20 years. It's been going on for a long time. And it's catastrophic for Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so here it says, one who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. Well, is there any proof of this? Yes, there is. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, this explanation is given. And it says, it is understood in this connection that Lord Krishna, first of all, situated himself in the unalloyed heart of Vasudeva and was then transferred to the heart of Devaki. He was not put into the womb of Devaki by seminal discharge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable potency, can appear in any way. It is not necessary for him to appear in the ordinary way by seminal injection within the womb of a woman. So, it says, he says that, well, first of all, it explains how Balaram was transferred from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, which was another wife of Vasudeva, who was living at that time under the protection of Krishna's foster father. So that's another thing, that a transfer of a fetus from the womb of one mother to the womb of another mother. And all that is done by Krishna's transcendental potency called Yoga Maya. So then, after that, it says, it is understood in this connection that Lord Krishna, first of all, situated himself in the unalloyed heart of Vasudeva. What does it mean, unalloyed? He had no attachment to material nature. No attachment for sense gratification. That's what it means. So an alloy is a mixture. I'll look at the word A-L-L-O-Y. An alloy is a mixture of metals. So when it says unalloyed, there's no mixture of sense gratification and spiritual life. It's pure, unalloyed love for Krishna. What's it say? Alloy? A-L-L-O-Y. What? Speak into the microphone.
It's a metal made of combining two or more metallic elements.
Yeah, you see? So when you say unalloyed, it means there's no mixture of Maya in the mind of the pure devotee. It's only concerned about pleasing Krishna through all his thoughts and actions. So therefore it says that Vasudeva had an unalloyed heart. So this is what Krishna looks for. He looks in the heart. Well, he's already situated in your heart, in my heart, right? But when it's an unalloyed heart, we have no other mixed material desire with spiritual desires. We only have pure spiritual desires. At that time, miraculous things can happen, such as without mundane sex, a child can be born. So the same thing happened with Brahma. He was not born of seminal discharge. He appeared from Garbhodakshay Vishnu, just by the Lord's thinking of it. And in the same way here, it says that Krishna, who is always ready to protect his unalloyed devotees, entered within the mind of Vasudeva as the Lord of the whole creation, with full inconceivable potencies. So we also said previously many times, unless you accept that Krishna has inconceivable potencies, you remain an atheist. This is what the atheists say. This is impossible for anyone have such inconceivable potencies. Because we can't have it, we can't accept that somebody else can have it. Well, that's because they're envious. That's why they can't accept. It's not because such a thing doesn't exist. It's because of their enviousness that they refuse to accept it. Otherwise, if they accept that, they would have to surrender to Krishna. That's why they don't accept. See? And that's why they don't. Instead of teaching the real cause of creation, they teach Molly and Lucy. Oh, Lisa. Molly and Lisa, right? They created the world, and that's what you should teach kids in the Montessori school. Don't talk about God. Just talk about Molly and Lisa. This is the type of nonsense that's going on. You might not realize. Did you know that before? Huh? Okay. Well, because one of our ladies, is studying to be a Montessori teacher. She told me that, and I had her speak about that 2 days ago. Right? This is what the nonsense is going on in the schools today. It's not only in the Montessori school, in all the schools. Okay, so it says, Lord Krishna first of all situated himself in the unalloyed heart of Vasudeva and was then transferred to the heart of Devaki. So how did that happen? It's going to explain it. He was not put into the womb of Devaki by seminal discharge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable potency, can appear in any way. It is not necessary for him to appear in the ordinary way by seminal injection within the womb of a woman. When Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, he appeared just like the glowing sun whose shining rays are always unbearable and scorching to the common man. The form of the Lord situated in the pure, unalloyed heart of Vasudeva is not different from the original form of Krishna. The appearance of the form of Krishna anywhere, and specifically within the heart, is called Dhamma. Dhamma refers not only to Krishna's form, but also to his name, his qualities, and his paraphernalia. Everything becomes manifest simultaneously. Thus, the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with full potencies, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki, exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. There it is. The whole thing is done mentally. without the plumbing, let's call it plumbing, right? You have genitals, you have vaginas and things like that. Without all that plumbing, Krishna can create in the spiritual world and in the material world. He's not limited by anything. He doesn't need a wife in order to create a living entity. And the proof is Brahma. Brahma was not born by a man and woman uniting. So this is inconceivable to the mundane archaeologists, the mundane scientists, the mundane philosophers, the mundane empiricists, the mundane speculators. They can't imagine there's someone as powerful as Krishna. It's just without any reference to their life. So they just reject it. Right? It's just like Rukmi. He was defeated many times in chess by Krishna, and every time he said he won. And that's exactly what the scientists are. They're being defeated all the time by their phony theories and their phony statements about, what is, everything started by Big Bang and this and that. We all come from monkeys and all the nonsense that they teach. They're all being defeated. But they refuse to accept that they're defeated, even though there's no proof of what they're saying. And it's being taught as science in schools today. Molly and Lisa. All nonsense, right? So, it says, thus the eternal form of the Supreme Personality Godhead with full potencies was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki, exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, thus entered the body of Devaki from the body of Vasudeva, without being subject to any of the conditions of an ordinary living entity. Since Krishna was there, it is to be understood that all his plenary expansions, such as Narayana and incarnations like Lord Nrsimha and Varaha, were with him, and they also were not subject to the conditions of material existence. In this way, so whenever Krishna comes, all his expansions are with him also. Again, another inconceivable concept. First of all, how can one person expand himself so many times? There are innumerable trillions of Narayana expansions. There are innumerable trillions and quadrillions and septabillions of Kshirodakshai Vishnu's expansions into every atom of every universe. And there are an infinite number of material universes and infinite number of living entities. And he's in the heart of every living entity and in every atom of every universe. Just imagine how much expansion there is of Krishna. And these are plenary expansions of the Lord. So we have no idea who God is. Someone says, well, it's Sai Baba, he's God. They don't have any understanding of what God is and what it means, because they don't read the scriptures. They just listen to phony gurus that speak nonsense. So then again it says, since Krishna was there, it is to be understood that all his plenary expansions, such as Narayana, and incarnations like Lord Nrsimha and Varaha, were with him, and they also were not subject to the conditions of material existence. In this way, Devaki became the resonance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second and the cause of all creation. Devaki became the resonance of the Absolute Truth, but because she was confined within the house of Kamsa, she looked just like a suppressed fire or like misused education. Well, that's the whole point. Everybody knows, even the kids of their parents who are initiated, maybe Brahmin initiated, that there's Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. But how many of them take it seriously to read and to hear lectures on a daily basis? Very few. Very, very few. Even though they grow up in this culture, but they haven't learned the real culture, which is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. That's the real culture. of Krishna consciousness. Regularly hearing and repeating and thus remembering all these details about Krishna's unique transcendental qualities. Unless we understand that, we will remain an atheist. In this way, Devaki became the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second, and the cause of all creation. Devaki became the residence of the Absolute Truth, but because she was confined within the house of Kamsa, she looked just like a suppressed fire or like misused education. So what is that? How can a person look like misused education? Well, because they're drinking champagne, smoking cigars or cigarettes, and they're engaging in illicit sensual activities, and they're reading all kinds of junk books, and memorizing books like Molly and Lisa, so they can teach their kids about it, and so forth. So that's what would be misused education. When and they use their so-called education, or PhDs, to refine their sense gratification. Not to please the Lord, but to refine their sense gratification, to get more and more comfortable beds for sleeping and sense gratification, to get more and more comfortable cars for showing off how powerful and wealthy they are, and to get more and more this and more that, just to satisfy their false egos. When fire is kept in a jug, the illuminating rays of the fire cannot be very much appreciated. Similarly, misused knowledge, which does not benefit the people in general, is not very much appreciated. Wow. So that's actually, if you look at the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Jamadasya yata nivayad itaratas chartesu avigyaswarat tene brahma hridaya adhikavayanti muyanti yat suraya tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yatra trisargomisha damna srina sada nirastakukam satyam param dhimai. So Krishna is satyam param dhimai, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is equal to him, no one is greater than him, and no one can emulate him in anything. But besides that, people live under the illusion of yoga, of Maya, and therefore they imagine so many things that are not true, and because of that, they waste their time. And whatever education they have, they use it only for sense gratification rather than use it for the pleasure of Krishna. Therefore, they waste their education, even though they're well educated. The lowest people are called Naradama. And in the 15th chapter, 7th chapter, 15th verse, let's see what it says about Naradamas. Naradamas are considered the lowest of the lowest, but they're highly educated. Right? Those who are miscreants, who are grossly foolish, those are the mudas, the people who think, real life is eating, sleeping, and engaging in sense gratification. Who are the lowest among mankind? That's the Naradamas. They're highly educated, but they don't use their education to please Krishna. So let's see what it says here. Another class of Duskriti, or miscreant, is called the Naradama, or the lowest of mankind. Nara means human being, and Adama means the lowest. Out of the 8,400,000 different species of living beings, there are 400,000 human species. Out of these, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. The civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. So, regulative principles means go to bed early, wake up early, take advantage of the Brahma Muhurta for spiritual activity, such as Aarti and Tulsi Devi, puja, and then hearing classes and chanting your rounds, etc. They're regulated for spiritual advancement. So the civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. Those who are socially and politically developed, but who have no religious principles, must be considered Naradamas. Nor is religion without God religion, because the purpose of following religious principles is to know the supreme truth and man's relation with him. In the Gita, the personality of Godhead clearly states that there is no authority above him and that he is the supreme truth. The civilized form of human life is meant for man, reviving the lost consciousness of his eternal relation with the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is all-powerful. Whoever loses this chance is classified as Naradama. We get information from revealed scriptures that when the baby is in the mother's womb, an extremely uncomfortable situation, the baby prays to God for deliverance and promises to worship him alone as soon as he gets out of the womb. To pray to God when he is in difficulty is a natural instinct in every living being because he is eternally related with God. But after his deliverance, the child forgets the difficulties of birth and forgets his deliverer also, being influenced by Maya, the illusory energy. It is the duty of the guardians of children to revive the divine consciousness dormant in them. The 10 processes of reformatory ceremonies, as enjoined, those are called samskaras, are enjoined in the Manusmriti, which is the guide to religious principles, are meant for reviving God consciousness in the system of Varnashrama. However, no process is strictly followed now in any part of the world, and therefore 99.9% of the population is Naradama. Wow. When the whole population becomes Naradama, naturally, all their so-called education is made null and void by the all-powerful energy of the physical nature. According to the standard of the Gita, a learned man is he who sees on equal terms the learned Brahmana, the dog, the cow, the elephant, and the dog-eater. That is the vision of a true devotee. Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who is the incarnation of Godhead as divine master, delivered the typical Naradamas, the brothers Jagai and Madai, and showed how the mercy of a real devotee is bestowed upon the lowest of mankind. So the Naradama, who is condemned by the personality of Godhead, can again revive his spiritual consciousness only by the mercy of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in propagating the Bhagavad Dharma, or activities of the devotees, has recommended that people submissively hear the message of the personality of Godhead. The essence of this message is Bhagavad Gita. The lowest amongst human beings can be delivered by this submissive hearing process only. But unfortunately, they even refuse to give an oral reception to these messages. And what to speak of surrendering to the will of the Supreme Lord? Naradamas, or the lowest of mankind, will fully neglect the prime duty of the human being. Whoa. Have you ever read this purport? Huh? What? Okay. Do you remember it? This is a powerful purport, isn't it? You know, I mean, we're all Naradamas. We have a lot of high education, but we're not really using it to please Krishna. We're just following, you know, Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and this one and that one, and, you know, and trying to make all these rich people richer, right? So we don't really get rich. I mean, we make some money, but we don't really get richer. They're getting richer and richer all the time. And the richer they get, the more people become poor. We see that now. Because Amazon is in Seattle, all the rents went up very high, right? And now Seattle is full, the Seattle city is full of homeless people. The same thing in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York. New York has always had a huge homeless population. New York is the center of economic development of the whole world. That's why Al-Qaeda tried to destroy the stock market, which was at that time in the Twin Towers. They wanted to destroy the whole economy of the world by destroying the stock market, the American stock market. So we see those places that have the most material advancement, their best product is more homeless people. That's their best product. And for New York, some years ago, there was the Occupy, Occupy Wall Street. Why was there this movement, Occupy Wall Street? Because people said, look, all these rich guys, they're living up on the 40th, 50th, floor of all these high-rises, and we're taking the subway, and we're living check to check, and sometimes we can't get that check. We lose our job, and we become homeless. And they said, this is not fair. Therefore, we're going to occupy Wall Street and force them to give us money. That was the whole idea, Occupy Wall Street. Look it up, Occupy Wall Street. See? They had the same thing a long time ago in England called the Luddites. Luddite was named after this guy. His name was Luddite. He had the same type of movement going on. And Marx correctly analyzed the capitulation of capitalism. He said the inherent in capitalism is that periodically it will fail due to exploitation by the people who have money, other people who don't have money. Go ahead. What does it say? Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street was a protest movement against economic inequality.
Economic inequality, right? It means rich people, poor people.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And the influence of money in politics that began in Zuccotti Park, located in New York City's Wall Street financial district in September 2011. It gave rise to the wider Occupy movement in the United States and other countries. And then it goes on to say the origins. The original protest was called for by Kelly Lassen and others of Adbusters, a Canadian. Somewhere it started in Canada.
It's all the fault of the Canadians.
Who conceived of a September 17th occupation in Lower Manhattan. The first such proposal appeared in the Adbusters website on February 2nd, 2011 under a title, A Million Man March on Wall Street.
Never happened. Never happened. When they say Million Man March, they're talking about maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's a Million Man March. Yeah. So, you see, but this is nothing new. Look up Luddite, L-U-D-I-T-E, Luddite. What? Double D, okay. What does it say? See, if you ever read Das Kapital, if you ever read the Das Kapital by Marx, he says in that book that there will be frequently occurring revolts against capitalism because it breeds this greed and makes people unnecessarily very rich and other people poor. Go ahead. What does it say? Luddite?
Yeah, so the Luddites were a secret oath-based organization of English textile workers in the 19th century, a radical faction which destroyed textile machinery. The group are believed to have taken their name from Ned Ludd, a legendary weaver supposedly from Anstey near Leicester, I think. Leicester. They protested against manufacturers who used machines in what they called a fraudulent and deceitful manner to get around the standard labor practices. Luddites feared that the time spent learning the skills of their craft would go waste as machines would replace their role in the industry. Is that?
Yeah,
so basically, yeah, this is where many Luddites were owners of workshops.
They were trying to destroy the machines.
Yeah.
Because they knew they would lose their jobs, right?
Yes.
So this is happening all the time. One tractor puts 100 people out of work, and AI will put a lot of people out of work. You see, because the capitalists have no moral fiber. Their only concern is how much money they're going to make. So obviously they can make more money with a robot who doesn't take vacations, doesn't get sick, can work 24 hours a day, right? So, it's a no-brainer, replace everybody with robots, right? Even though the robot might be expensive, but in the long term, they're going to make more money with the robots than with real people. Every one of you guys in IT, you're all going to be replaced. The only type of job you'll be able to get is to be a babysitter of a robot. And the robot will tell you what to do. And you have to follow him. Go get me some coffee. Yes, sir. So, and this causes people to revolt. It's nothing new. I mean, you can see in the 19th century, the people were revolting. They were destroying the machines that were starting to come in and taking their jobs. So, and Marx correctly analyzed that there will always be this sort of breakdown in capitalism. And we're seeing it now. Black Lives Matter, and then the Occupy Wall Street, and all these things. They are basically criticizing the culture of money, not the culture of people, the culture of money. Money talks is a saying. My mom used to say it all the time. Money talks and nonsense walks. In other words, anything outside of money is nonsense, right? Money is the main thing. It's just like in India. Now, the new god of India is not Krishna, it's Rupiah. It's the new god of India. Okay, so these Naradamas, they're educated people, but they don't use their education to serve Krishna. They just use it for sense gratification. Okay, so now this is a discussion of sex life in the spiritual world. It has nothing to do with sex in the material world. And the feeling of ecstasy. See, now this, I'm going to read something. What time is it now? Okay. Okay, we'll leave it for tomorrow. Are there any questions?
So Maharaj, you mentioned about Lord Krishna without like the mundane sex, how he can obviously create people
Unlimitedly.
Unlimitedly. There are also references in the scriptures where, let's say, even the demigods had the power of, without the mundane plumbing, as you said, that they would also induce birth of their descendants. Is Pandavas, for example.
What?
Pandavas themselves were descendants of the demigods in that way. So how do we differentiate between what the Lord's capability versus these demigods, even some yogis?
I'm not sure what you're saying is. I'm not challenging what you're saying, but I'm not sure if that's a fact that the demigods can reproduce without the plumbing. And you're saying the Pandavas also?
The Pandavas, for example, Kunti had the boon, right? Which is like, if you wanted to have the, what was the actual detail? But
No, she could copulate with anybody that she wanted, just by calling them. But they copulated. It's not that there was it was a mental transfer from the demigod to Kunti. No. Not that I know of. Now, if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But, and just like, what's his name? Parasara Muni. He copulated with Satyavati. Yeah, but that was with plumbing. It was not a mental transfer.
And Vyasa Maharshi himself was the source of...
Who?
Vyasa Muni
Yeah.
himself was the...
Son.
No, he was the source of both Dhritarashtra and Pandavas, right?
Yeah,
Panduraj.
he copulated.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I sound a little doubtful that the demigods can produce living entities without copulation. I mean, if you have an example of it, you can give it to me. Yeah.
That was the example. I think I also under impression that about the Pandavas, because everybody is different, right? So
You think that they were producing kids just mentally?
yeah.
I don't think so. Where's the evidence of that? It might be. I mean, I'm willing to get educated. You know, if I don't see any evidence of it, but if you have the evidence, you present it. Yeah. Huh?
We'll find out if there is any
Okay.
further research.
Yes. All right. Any other questions? You see, when it says, there's a huge thing I have to read from the Brahma Samhita, but we'll do it tomorrow, where this subject, is Krishna's paramourship legitimate or illegitimate? The mundane people say it's illegitimate, it's nonsense, it's illicit sex. So this thing was explained by Jiva Goswami in depth. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talks about it in the Brahma Samhita in long passages, because this is especially it's in, if you want to read, for preparing for tomorrow, you read Brahma Samhita text 37. Is a huge purport, and like almost half of that purport is about, is Krishna involved with paramours? In other words, a paramour would be an illicit relationship. And of course, the nonsense people say, yes, for sure, he was engaged in illicit activities, but it's not a fact. Yes. Yeah.
I was wondering, what is the difference between believing in something, knowing something, and having faith in something?
It's all based on whether you accept bona fide guru or not. Without bona fide guru, you cannot figure it out. You won't know the difference between those three categories. But if you have a bona fide guru who only speaks with shastric evidence, then you can differentiate between what is real knowledge, what is bogus, who are real devotees and who are bogus, and what is, the real purpose of life and what is not the real purpose of life. Then you will know. Without guru, bona fide guru, you can't figure these things out. You can try. You might come close on some of those, but you won't get it right completely. So we depend on what you call Shruti, Smriti, and Pancharatra. Shruti, Smriti, and Pancharatra. Pancharatra is what Narada Muni has written. Shruti is what Krishna has spoken, and Smriti is what's spoken about Krishna. Those are our three let's say, sources of knowledge, right? The original is Krishna's spoken words. Secondly is people who repeat it, like Sukadeva Goswami. And third is what was spoken originally by Narada Muni in the Pancharatra. So those are our three main sources of knowledge. Of course, it doesn't mention, what Marx has written, what Freud has written, what Darwin has written, what Schopenhauer has written, what Leibniz has written. All those people are so-called big philosophers, but they don't. They're like the germ in the intestine of the worm, compared to Vyasadeva or Narada Muni. You say so. We don't even consider them because they're all full of speculation. But if you want to study philosophy, you have to learn all those speculations, right? And in the end, what do you end up with? A lot of information, but no real substantive knowledge. You get a lot of information, but no substantive. Look that word up, substantive. It's a very important word. I mean, it's basically real, fundamental, real. No substantive knowledge. You learn a lot of things, like, Schopenhauer said this, and Sartre said that, and the other one said this, and the other one said that, right? You can learn that, right? But you have no conclusion about what the truth is. Go ahead. Substantive.
Yeah, substantive is having a firm basis in reality and therefore important, meaningful, or considerable. Having is. So that's what.
Yeah, understanding the truth as
Yeah.
opposed to understanding speculations. So that's the answer to your question. We depend on Shruti, Smriti, and Pancharatra. Right. Are you satisfied with that answer?
What you're effectively saying is that I cannot understand the answer to the question.
You cannot what?
I think what you're effectively saying is that cannot answer the question. I cannot understand the answer to the question unless there is a spiritual master. That's what I thought what you're saying. My question
Yes.
was, what is the difference between believing in something, having faith in something, and knowing something?
You will
I'm
not
not
know
sure.
the answer without bona fide spiritual master. That's why Krishna says, Tatvidi paripatena paripastena sevaya upadasyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha.
And that's true for any question, right?
Yes.
So any question, basically, you can answer like
How
that.
can you understand something in the spiritual world? You have no access to it. You can only understand it if someone comes from the spiritual world and explains it to you. This is a traditional question. Like, there was once, there's a traditional example is, it's described somewhere in the Vedas that there's a city that is on the river. Now, how do you understand on the river? Is it on one bank of the river? Or is it on the other bank of the river? Is it on some island in the middle of the river? Is it hovering in the air above the river? What does it mean, on the river? Huh? The only way you can understand is if you meet someone that's come from that village or that town. Then they could tell you, well, it's only on the left bank, or it's on the left bank and the right bank, or it's on the middle in the island, or it's in the air above the river, right? So you can't understand that statement unless someone comes who's actually been to that town and tells you exactly what it means on the river. You see my point? This is a classic example in the Vedas, right? So therefore, you need a bona fide guru and gurus to understand the Shastra. See, there are devotees, they don't read the purports of Prabhupada, they just read the verses. Guaranteed, they will make many, many mistakes of their own interpretation of what the verse says. And they'll end up with all kinds of false conclusions. You have to read the purport. And the purport, Prabhupada has distilled the purports of the previous acharyas and gives the essence. And he mentions those acharyas in the purports. So-and-so said, and Krishna said, and Sukadeva Goswami said, and so forth. He gives all those references in his purports. So he's not giving opinion. There's a difference between opinion and the truth. Opinion, anyone can have an opinion, right? But the truth is factual in all frames of reference and at all time. That's the truth. It's true in all frames of reference. It could be on the moon, it could be on the sun, it can be on the farthest planet in the universe, and it can be at all time, past, present, and future. That's the truth. So, Bhagavad Gita is the truth. But you can misinterpret it without reading the purports. You can misinterpret it tremendously. You have to read the purports. Okay, any more questions?
And not only reading, but also hearing, as you said.
Yes, hearing from bona fide devotees. Yeah. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You see, most of the time, people will not talk about spiritual sex because, it could be a very controversial thing, right? But we have to hear about it. We have to know what's the difference. And Prabhupada explicitly explains the difference, especially in this verse that we went over today. Simply by thinking of something, Krishna can make it happen. He doesn't need anything else. It's completely independent.
Can explain that also, because that is also controversial, because sons are outside. So just how do we understand that?
Well, she received this benediction from the angry Pandit Durvasa Muni, that she could call any demigod and have a child with that demigod. But it didn't happen mentally. And she would not be accused of having committed illicit activity. That's the other thing. So she received that benediction from Durvasa Muni. Why? Because she was very submissive and very, respectful. So Durvasa Muni gave her that benediction.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakarti Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakarti Sadma Jaras Prasade Bhai Mera Krishna Vanda Namate Jaharat Prasade Bhai Eva Koriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai Ebhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jai
He Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya Kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya Kya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Ye Prasade
Shri Guru Charane Rati Esiyo Tamagati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
Jai Prasad Pue Sarva Asa
Sarva Asa
Chakshu Janjilo Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Chakshudana Dila Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Divya Jan Hridar Prakasito
Jnani De Prakasita
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoti Avidya Vinasha Jakti
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate
Vedega Jahara Charito
Ajanara Charito
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adamadana Bandhu
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Lokena Lokara Jivana
Cannot look at a Jivana
Maha Prabhu Korona De Mori Padachaya Maha Prabhu Korona
Prabhu Gora Toya Deha Muri Padachaya
He Bhaja Sago Shatri Bhuvana
Tribhuvana
Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Devi Brahmani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashajadeshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasyajadeshatarine
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Nittai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gora Hari Bol
Jai Guru Hari Bol Bol Nitai Guru Hari Bol Premanandi, Haribol, Jayam Vishnupad, Paramhansa Pararajikachasta, Tarasatara Shimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavani ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vinata Swami Nitanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Mani Vichani Devi Sesa Sunivadi Paskati Desatani Gaur Premanandi. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna.
My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires.
He opens my darkened eyes. He opens my darkened
eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge.
He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing his character. Our spiritual master.
Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, the Lord and master of the devotees. O Lokanath Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame spread all over the three worlds.
We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.